by 17,180 votes, while that of the Bola Oyebamiji of All Progressive Congress (APC) took second by 444,815 votes. Now, there have been so many responses, there have been so many reactions as to the outcome and aftermath of that election when the winner was declared on Sunday morning, that Ademola Adeleke won that election. And some people in the some people, maybe some people in the opposition and those in the in the APC, reacted to that election. And as we speak at the moment, the APC in Osun are still yet to believe that they lost that election, despite the quote and unquote federal might. Before this particular interview, Ayof Dele Fayose had with, I think it was on TVC a few days ago, Nyesom Wike, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory and former Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, while addressing the press, I think it was on Monday or so, or Tuesday, did said that Tinubu allowed that election Tinubu allowed the result of that election, and that if he said, I think this was Wike's, I would have played Wike's voice as well, but I couldn't lay my hands on it. Wike said if Tinubu had wanted APC, to win that election, that he would have been involved in that election. He would have been involved in that election, but he was not involved. So, this is what the audio that you listened to, that Fayose's audio that you listened to, is to tell you the character of people in government, how they think. Remember the incident he gave when he was governor in 2018, of how the former president, late President Muhammadu Buhari, how he influenced the Ekiti State governorship election. How he influenced the Ekiti State governorship election. So that is to show you how presidents, how powerful they are. How powerful they are in government. All right, how powerful they are in government. Remember that before Fayose became governor of Ekiti State, before Fayose became governor of Ekiti State, I think that was the election that brought in Kayode Fayemi in Ekiti State. So that instance, that incident that Fayose narrated, that was the election that brought in Dr. Kayode Fayemi in Ekiti State. Despite the fact that he identified himself as governor, that every mode of communication, was blocked, and he even took the decision to go and protest that he was not allowed to come out of the government house. So now the question is, because what Fayemi said is just to tell you that our leaders, when they say something in the public, they mean another thing in private. Okay, when our leaders, when they say something in public, they mean another thing in private. So if you say that if the president or if the federal government had interest, if the federal government wanted to rig that election, wanted to topple that election, they would have done it. And the question is, so what is the independence of INEC? Because the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has always been clamoring, or has always been an advocate or a crusader for institutions to operate independently without the interference of the federal government, without the interference of any, without an external interference. So if yes, and so what? If the president wished, to topple that election, he would have done it. If he wished to rig that election, he would have done it. So where is the honor? Where is the honor? If at the end of the day, because if that election would have been rigged, it would have been something else in Osun State. But the people overpowered the government. The people of Osun State, because that is why it is very, very important that there are some events that should be covered, should be given media coverage. And thank God the power of social media. A lot of people don't know that social media played a vital role in that Osun election on Saturday. Social media played a vital role in that election on Saturday. So that is why, because I just realized now that I think during the election in Uganda, this president Yoweri Museveni, during the election in Uganda, the social media space in Uganda was shut down. So that is to tell you a federal interference, and it is barbaric that a government would decide to shut the airspace, to shut the airwaves, to shut the social media space when an election is being held, because they have an ulterior motive. Imagine when an election is being held in the country and the social media space is shut down. You will not have access to the internet. You will not have access to social media. Imagine that. And so if a government decide to shut down the social media space, decide to paralyze forms of communications during elections, so where is the honor? Where is the honor of you being the president? Where is the praise of you being the president? An ordinary governorship election, just because you have some ulterior motive, just because you have influence or you have personalities or interest in that election, you want to rig that election. So what is the honor of rigging an election? What have you gained? Because at the end of the day, the person that you have in mind to be elected, to win that election, the person will only be there for 4 or 8 years. So it makes no sense. It makes no sense the likes of Ayodele Fayose and Nyesom Wike to say that if Tinubu wanted to rig that election would have been rigged. It is dishonorable. Being the president of a country, that you would have rigged the election if you wanted to. Now, if you have rigged that election and if you succeed in rigging that election, what honor does it bring to you as a president? Where is the vibrancy of democracy? What honor does it bring if you wanted that election to be rigged and you succeeded in rigging that election? What honor does it bring to you? Is it something that is praiseworthy? Is it something that is praiseworthy, or is something that will tarnish your image as president? No wonder during the Buhari's administration, I didn't fancy much of his administration, because I didn't fancy Buhari's administration more because there were some governors during Buhari's administration that were not in good terms with the former president. Particularly, a typical example of one of the governors that was not in good terms with the former president. Nyesom Wike was never in good terms with former President Muhammadu Buhari. He was never in a good term with him. So my urge to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is that going forward, yes, you have demonstrated your claims that you are a Democrat. You have demonstrated some claims, you have proved yourself right to some extent that you are a Democrat. You are the one that believes in the principle of democracy, the democratic process that you will, But we want to urge the president that in the forthcoming election in 2027, what was displayed, the outcome of the Osun State election, where there was no form of intimidation, when there was no, there were intimidation, but where there was no form of interference. This is what we witnessed on Saturday, whereby the will of the people prevailed in Osun State on Saturday. Mr. President, we want to see that replicated in the 2027 general elections, in January 16 presidential and National Assembly election, and February 6 governorship and state houses of assembly election. The level at which the will of the people prevailed on Saturday, Mr. President, we want to see that happen next year. Yes, you desired so much to be re-elected, but when the atmosphere seems like the election is turning to the other side, Mr. President, we want to urge that there should be no form of interference. Because a lot of people are saying that, particularly those in the opposition, particularly this gentleman, Hakim Baba Ahmed, he said that he was on Channels Television yesterday. He said that that if the APC can be defeated in Osun State, that there's a possibility that this is what will happen. But you can't say that. But you never can tell what will happen. I am not praying that the APC will lose in 2027 or win in 2027. I am not praying that another party will be voted in 2027. But what I'm saying is that the will of the people should be able to prevail in the January 16 presidential election. Because this is one of the beautiful things of democracy, that seeing people's will prevail, that the candidate that was voted for is the candidate that will be declared winner. There will be no manipulation of election figures like people claim that they witnessed in 2023. And we also want to urge the Independent National Electoral Commission that they should carry out their duties. They should conduct the election independently. That the 2027 presidential election should be conducted independently. I trust the president so much that this is what will happen, that there won't be any form of interference by any big political figures within the APC in next year's election. I believe so much that this is what will happen. But if we are seeing that things are turning the other way around, it will not be good. It will not be good. So much trust was entrusted, in 2023 election, that the INEC would do something better. But at the end of the day, INEC performed below the expectations. So it is our prayer that going into, I think this would be the last cycle election before 2027. I think so. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other election. I don't think there's any other election. The Ekiti State election has been held. Yes, I think Odo State election. I think so. I stand to be corrected. No, he has been voted in now. Ayedatiwa has been voted in. So I pray that going to the 2027 elections, that things will run smoothly. Okay, the way that the electoral officers, conducted themselves last week Saturday, we hope that INEC will be able to recruit credible polling officers, not just NYSC coppers, but if you want to use NYSC, make sure that the people you are using, they are not just random individuals, but people who understand the duty that they've been called for. This is a national duty. This is a national duty, so things must be done in a civilized manner. Things must be done in a civilized manner. So Ayodele Fayose did make some claims that if the president wanted to rig election, that it would have been done. It is understandable that the president can influence election, but to what honor will it be? To what honor will it be if that election was rigged? If what we are seeing online, the report by the observers, if the report we are seeing online, on social media, is different from, and it will be different from what the INEC will declare, it will be something of, something that will not be palatable to hear. According to Fayose, he says his 2018 Ekiti experience was different from what happened in Osun State. How credible are his allegations, and what lessons should Nigerians learn from both elections? Well, one of the lessons that we can learn from what happened in Ekiti State in 2018 and what happened in Osun State on Saturday was that the people were determined to ensure that their votes are protected, their votes counted, and they made sure that they safeguard their votes. But unlike the one in 2018, I think that Ayodele Fayose was fighting alone, assuming he had other people, because he was in the PDP then, assuming he had, and the PDP themselves, I doubt if he had a lot of this massive support that, I doubt if he had that level of support given to him by the PDP. So it was just unfortunate that what happened in 2018, it happened that way. Now, with the appointment of the INEC chairman, the Inspector General of Police, can Nigeria realistically expect these institutions to remain neutral during an election? Well, the police has made it clear that the army do not have any obligation. They don't have a duty. They don't have a duty to be seen. The military do not have duty to be seen, in and around the election, whatever. So it is the police that is charged with the responsibility, of providing security during and after an election. All right, it is the police that has that responsibility, and I want to believe that the INEC chairman, who is a professor, understands the terrain, understand the climate, will understand the gravity of the assignment that has been given to him for 2027. We have seen him carry out election, the Ekiti State election, and the Osun State election, and other pockets of election. And to a large extent, he has been ranked, he has been scored more or less like an average score. So we hope that the INEC will use the lessons, we review the Ekiti State election and the Osun State election, review mistakes that have been made, and see how these mistakes will not repeat themselves in 2027 in terms of logistics, in terms of, yeah, because a lot of people complained about the failure of the beavers, particularly those in the civil society organizations. They complained about the failure of the beavers. So we want a more perfect functionality when it comes to voters accreditation on the day of election. No longer should somebody complain that that the machine could not capture his face. Remember that elderly man who wanted to cast his, who wanted to exercise his franchise, who wanted to carry out his civic responsibility, but he was denied to vote. So we hope that now this is the time for INEC to start perfecting everything that they need to perfect ahead of 2027, because it's just it's just 5 months. It's just 5 months. The 2027 general election is 5 months from now. So that is how close it is. You think that next year is just about 5 months from now. So I urge the Independent National Electoral Commission to do everything possible to make sure that they are fully ready, fully prepared in terms of manpower, recruitment, their readiness. They are fully prepared for the election in 2027. All right, Lagos. That is how far I can go this morning here. It is 42 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock, Bukola Olowolafe will be here for the news update at 10. It is a pleasure spending your breakfast with us here on Overt Radio. Tomorrow is a Friday edition of Overt Radio Breakfast Show. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. I am Ken.